Think war movies are just glorified action flicks with explosions and one-liners? You're wrong. Some films got so obsessively accurate that veterans literally experienced trauma watching them. Here's the thing most people don't know. Hollywood actually nailed it sometimes. Today we're breaking down 14 films so brutally authentic that military historians can't stop talking about them. These aren't sanitized propaganda pieces. These are the real deal. Ready? Let's go. Number 14, Saving Private Ryan, 1998. Steven Spielberg didn't just make a war movie here. He weaponized accuracy. The opening Omaha Beach sequence took 4 weeks, $12 million, and Watson 500 extras to film. But here's what killed audiences. Veterans started having flashbacks while watching it, like actual PTSD. Combat medics who were there said Spielberg nailed everything from the moment soldiers hit the water to the relentless chaos. The film used actual landing craft from the 1940s, real uniforms, and weapons with period-accurate sound design that makes your bones vibrate. Spielberg didn't storyboard the chaos either. He let it play out organically, letting the madness just happen. The result? A 27-minute sequence that military consultants and historians across the board agree captures D-Day so perfectly that nothing has matched it since. The film made $482 million globally, won 5 Oscars, and changed how every war movie after it had to be made. That opening scene alone influenced an entire generation of filmmakers. Spielberg proved you don't need fantasy war stories when real history is already horrifying enough. Number 13, Dunkirk, 2017. Christopher Nolan stripped war down to its skeleton with this one. The 1940 evacuation of 400,000 British and French soldiers from Dunkirk Beach wasn't some glamorous military victory. It was pure desperation and chaos. Nolan filmed on the actual evacuation site, rebuilt the mole where soldiers boarded boats using original 1940 blueprints, and imported sand from Dunkirk to match the authentic setting. The costume designer researched every single material to ensure uniforms weren't just visually correct but made from period-accurate fabric. Nolan deliberately avoided having generals or politicians explain what's happening. You don't even hear the word German in the entire film. Instead, he traps you in the terror experienced by actual soldiers. Former Marines like Ton Vega praised the film's realism in depicting the absolute nightmare of tending to wounded soldiers while bombardments continue around you. The aerial combat sequences? Fighter pilots have said they're the most authentic dogfight footage since actual World War II combat. Dunkirk grossed over $600 million worldwide and proved that minimal dialogue combined with maximum accuracy creates something far more powerful than typical war movie exposition. Number 12, Platoon, 1986. Oliver Stone served 2 tours in Vietnam. He was wounded twice. When he made Platoon, he channeled that lived trauma into every single scene. Stone didn't base this on any specific battle or individual story. Instead, he captured the psychological destruction of warfare itself. The film shows what America got completely wrong in Vietnam. The terrain. That thick jungle negated every advantage the US had. Soldiers couldn't see enemies 10 feet away. The heat was suffocating. The confusion was absolute. Stone served in the Army from 1967 to 1968 and earned a Bronze Star, which means he wasn't speculating about warfare. He was remembering it. The film's depiction of how soldiers transformed from idealistic kids into hardened killers remains one of cinema's most devastating character studies. Military historians rank Platoon as the gold standard for Vietnam authenticity because it doesn't glorify combat. It shows the moral confusion, the friendly fire, the rage, and the complete loss of purpose. The film earned $140 million at the box office and influenced every Vietnam War movie made afterward. Number 11, Das Boot, 1981. Wolfgang Petersen built not 1 but 2 full-scale replicas of the German submarine U-96 to make this film. The production consulted with actual U-boat veterans like Heinrich Lehmann-Willenbrock and Hans-Joachim Krug, men who'd actually survived the Atlantic. These consultants insisted Petersen get every detail right, from the stench of diesel fuel and unwashed bodies to the claustrophobic terror of waiting for depth charges. The film isn't glorifying German soldiers. It shows how miserable, hopeless, and morally confused these men were. The combat scenes were deliberately shot in what critics called a hyper-real style. Every weapon has authentic sound design. The submarine's interior is so cramped that modern audiences can't believe humans actually lived in such conditions. Das Boot costs substantial money, but remains the definitive U-boat film because it refuses to simplify the story. These men aren't villains or heroes. They're desperate sailors fighting a war they didn't start, trapped in metal tubes waiting to die. The film's emotional authenticity combined with technical precision makes it a masterclass in war cinema. It remains impossible to watch without feeling the psychological weight these men carried. Number 10. Come and See, 1985. Director Elem Klimov experienced the siege of Stalingrad personally. He brought that nightmare directly into this film. Come and See is so disturbing and historically accurate that many viewers say they can only watch it once. Klimov insisted his film had to be realistic to the maximum. Every war crime, every massacre, every moment of brutality in the film corresponds to documented historical events from the Nazi occupation of Belarus. The film doesn't shy away from depicting atrocities, it forces you into them. A teenage boy protagonist gets swept into Soviet partisan warfare and descends into absolute psychological devastation. The cinematography is deliberately surreal and haunting. The sound design amplifies the chaos. Klimov used period-accurate weapons and vehicles. The battle sequences were filmed with documentary-style realism that historians have verified by comparing them to actual World War II footage. This isn't entertainment. This is historical testimony translated into cinema. The film cost relatively little but achieved something filmmakers spend millions trying to capture: the raw, unfiltered horror of war without any Hollywood sanitization. Number 9. Downfall, 2004. This German film examines Hitler's final days through the accounts of his secretary Traudl Junge. Most war movies ignore the psychological collapse of dictators in favor of grand battle scenes. Downfall goes the opposite direction. It's claustrophobic and intimate. Bruno Ganz portrays Hitler's complete mental deterioration as Soviet armies close in on Berlin. The filmmakers studied historical documents exhaustively. They interviewed people who were actually in the bunker. They recreated the physical spaces with obsessive accuracy. The film shows how the people surrounding Hitler seemed normal, bureaucratic, almost civilized, yet they enabled monstrous evil. Historian Dan Snow praised Downfall for its commitment to accuracy without sensationalizing Hitler himself. The film presents him as pathetic rather than powerful, which is arguably more accurate than dramatizing him as some larger-than-life villain. This psychological approach to war history offers something most combat-focused films ignore: the administrative machinery of genocide and the everyday people who operated it. Number 8. The Thin Red Line, 1998. Terrence Malick's meditative approach to the Battle of Guadalcanal sounds pretentious until you realize military historian John McManus graded it a 9 out of 10 for accuracy. Malick captured everything from how soldiers physically move across a battlefield to the actual blades of grass in the field. The film features documentary-style realism combined with philosophical voiceover narration. This sounds like it shouldn't work, but Malick proves that war films can be simultaneously accurate and poetic. The ensemble cast includes Sean Penn, Nick Nolte, John Cusack, and numerous others, yet the film never feels star-studded or Hollywood manufactured. Instead, it feels intimate and deeply human. Malick shows fear, beauty, mortality, and memory all intertwined. The combat scenes are deliberately paced to reflect the actual experience of soldiers waiting, watching, moving, and fighting. The film was initially underrated compared to Saving Private Ryan, which released the same year, but military experts consistently rank The Thin Red Line higher for historical authenticity because it doesn't manipulate emotions, it simply observes. Number 7. Letters from Iwo Jima, 2006. Clint Eastwood made this companion piece to Flags of Our Fathers to tell the Japanese perspective of the Battle of Iwo Jima. Eastwood literally shoots the story in Japanese from the viewpoint of a Japanese general and enlisted men preparing for what they know will be their deaths. The film draws from discovered letters written by actual soldiers who fought there. Eastwood uses these letters as historical sources to humanize enemies. Every soldier shown is given fears, hopes, personal dreams, and a sense of duty that goes beyond nationalist propaganda. The combat sequences are shot with documentary precision. The film doesn't glorify either side. It shows young men on both sides terrified and expecting to die. The production design reconstructs historical details with obsessive accuracy. Eastwood won Oscar nominations for both Iwo Jima films, but this one rarely gets the recognition it deserves. It stands as one of cinema's most respectful portrayals of enemy combatants, something war movies typically refuse to attempt. Number 6. 1917-2019. Director Sam Mendes created a war film so accurately historical that it holds up when compared to actual restored documentary footage from World War I. Cinematographer Roger Deakins shot the film to look like genuine World War I documentary material. The authenticity verification literally came from comparing 1917 to Peter Jackson's They Shall Not Grow Old. a documentary compiled from restored actual combat footage from 1917. The film follows two soldiers on a seemingly impossible mission across no man's land. The technical accuracy extends to weapons, uniforms, equipment, and the psychological terror of trench warfare. Mendes consulted extensively with military historians and veterans. Every detail from the trenches to the poison gas sequences to the moment soldiers go over the top has been verified for accuracy. The film looks like moving documentary because Mendes and Deakins deliberately studied period footage to understand exactly how war looked through 1917's camera technology and film stock. This approach makes 1917 feel haunting and authentic rather than polished and cinematic. Number 5. Hacksaw Ridge, 2016. Mel Gibson directed this based on the true story of Desmond Doss, a conscientious objector who became one of the most decorated soldiers of World War II. The absolutely wild part: Doss refused to carry a weapon his entire military service. He was a medic who saved 75 men under relentless enemy fire at the Battle of Okinawa. He became the first conscientious objector to receive the Medal of Honor. Gibson worked extensively with Doss's son to ensure accuracy. The film portrays Okinawa's absolute brutality. Soldiers crawl through darkness filled with enemy fire. The ground itself becomes a nightmare landscape. Gibson compresses the timeline for dramatic purposes, but the battle sequences were praised by military analysts for capturing the actual tactics and psychological weight soldiers endured. The film respects Doss's actual beliefs rather than softening them. It shows how faith and conviction aren't weaknesses in combat but can actually create extraordinary courage. The movie cost $70 million and grossed over $180 million worldwide. Number 4. Master and Commander: The Far Side of the World, 2003. Peter Weir adapted Patrick O'Brian's Aubrey Maturin novels set during the Napoleonic Wars. The production team achieved something remarkable. They built or restored actual naval vessels to film authentically. The HMS Surprise Recreation is historically accurate in every visible detail. Weir didn't use miniatures or CGI. His team studied period naval tactics, combat procedures, and even the way officers communicated during battles. The film portrays naval warfare with surprising accuracy for a period piece fiction film. Officers remained calm during combat not because filmmakers wanted unrealistic dignity, but because maintaining order during battle was genuinely essential to naval combat strategy. War historians consistently praise Master and Commander for understanding that historical accuracy in period war films doesn't mean adding explosions and yelling. It means understanding how people actually fought. Number 3. All Quiet on the Western Front, 2022. The 2022 Netflix adaptation joins the legendary 1930 original as one of cinema's most historically accurate World War I portrayals. The film follows Paul Bäumer, a German teenager swept up in patriotic fervor who enlists and gets destroyed by the realities of trench warfare. The Netflix version was criticized for leaving out some geopolitical elements from Erich Maria Remarque's original novel, but it was universally praised for battle sequence authenticity. The film shows trenches not as heroic battlegrounds, but as muddy hellscapes where soldiers die for meaningless gains. The weaponry is period accurate. The sound design recreates World War I's particular terror. Soldiers don't have heroic last words. They just die confused and scared. The cinematography deliberately avoids making war look cinematic. Instead, it looks like an extended historical nightmare. Military historians have verified that the combat tactics shown match documented historical records. Number 2. Hamburger Hill, 1987. Directed by John Irvin, Hamburger Hill is pure jungle brutality distilled into 2 hours of relentless combat. The film follows a squad of American soldiers fighting to take control of a single contested hill, Hill 937, against overwhelming enemy resistance. What makes Hamburger Hill stand out among Vietnam War movies is its obsessive commitment to authenticity that most filmmakers skip over. The soldiers talk like actual grunts. They use period-accurate slang. They're covered in dirt and blood, not Hollywood makeup. The film doesn't glamorize the chaos. It shows friendly fire, soldiers dying for tactical gains that mattered little, and the complete moral confusion of fighting in dense jungle where you can't see enemies 10 feet away. Military historians consistently praise Hamburger Hill as one of the most accurate depictions of Vietnam infantry experience ever filmed. The production consulted extensively with actual veterans and used real weaponry and equipment from the war. The battle sequences were choreographed based on documented historical tactics and survivor accounts. The film shows the high casualty rates and psychological toll with unflinching realism. Hamburger Hill was considered a commercial disappointment during its initial release, but has gained cult respect among military professionals and veterans who recognize its commitment to truth over spectacle. Unlike films that prioritize heroic narratives, Hamburger Hill simply shows exhausted young men fighting for survival on a muddy hill. Number 1. We Were Soldiers, 2002. Based on the book by Lieutenant General Hal Moore and war correspondent Joe Galloway, We Were Soldiers follows the Battle of Ia Drang, one of the first major engagements between U.S. forces and the North Vietnamese Army. Producer Mel Gibson and director Randall Wallace worked obsessively with actual participants. Moore himself served as a consultant and later said filmmakers got almost everything right. The film depicts not just soldiers but also their wives, showing how war devastated families on the home front while men fought overseas. The battle sequences are technically accurate. Soldiers don't perform impossible heroics. They struggle, support each other, and many of them die. Wallace researched extensively and made deliberate choices about what to include and what to omit for scope purposes rather than for dramatic license. The only significant deviation came at the ending, where Moore and his men lead a final charge that never actually happened. Wallace later said he wanted to end on a more visually powerful note, but he kept historical accuracy paramount throughout. The film earned $100 million worldwide and proved that respecting historical truth creates better filmmaking than embellishment. So there you have it. 14 films that prove Hollywood can absolutely nail historical accuracy when filmmakers care enough to actually do the research. These aren't your typical action blockbusters designed to sell popcorn by sacrificing truth. These are films where directors consulted with actual veterans, rebuilt historical locations, and refused to dramatize situations that were already horrifying enough. Here's the real question for you. If these war movies got accuracy right, why does most of Hollywood still resort to fantasy action for their war films? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Which of these movies hit you the hardest? And be honest with us, would you rather watch a technically accurate war film or a more entertaining but historically loose blockbuster? This comment section is about to get heated and we're ready for it.